Hi everyone, my name is David. I'm a KOK Play Frontier from the Genesis Group, and today I'm making another episode about inflation, where we're at, and how I believe the current CPI, Consumer Price Index, is really kind of like a scam, and you shouldn't trust it. And I'm going to use, I believe it's John Williams Shadow Stats. All right, so without further ado, let's get started. Yeah, so this is John Williams. He is the man who runs Shadow Stats. He is legendary. And let's go.
There's often talk that the current Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is not the most accurate gauge of inflation. Where our next guest is an economist who has been tracking the CPI for decades, and his calculations, inflation. My pleasure. Let's take a look at your first chart, John. On Shadow Stats, your website, you've presented various charts of your findings on what you believe inflation should be right now. The blue line is the Shadow Government Stats Alternative CPI Index, which you've calculated. And according to the blue line, inflation should be near in the double digits, near 15%, which is substantially higher than the 5.4% headline inflation that we've received from the BLS in the latest June readings. Tell us about this blue line and how you've calculated this, John.
Well, I used to be just sort of a standard economist, and where I had my own models on the economy and sold forecasts of same. But in the early 80s, the government started to change the numbers, and we're just reporting the numbers as traditionally seen and such. That's one thing. But what they did at the Bureau of Labor Statistics was that well, let me back off. Nixon went off the.
Okay, don't worry. We'll get back to that. All right. So let me show you what that is. Is right here. Okay. Shadow Government Statistics, Alternative Inflation Chart. And now John Williams, he has two charts. If you look, one is the shadow, it's a CPI based on the 1990s measurement, and another one from the 1980s measurement. Now, if you look at the 1990s measurement, this is the red line's the official one that, the government will show us, or the US government will show their citizens. The yellow line's the experimental one, and the blue line for here is based off 1990s standard of measuring inflation. Here we have 1980s, and you can see the blue line is the 1980s measurement, and the red line is the current one. And so even now in the current one, you have over 5% inflation. Here in the blue one, John Williams is saying, we're maybe, I'll say like this, over 14%. All right. And so you're kind of wondering, why is that? What is it that the government has changed in how they classify inflation compared to 1980s and now? So I'm going to get into that right here into the video. Let me see if I could get in. It's about 4 minutes, 15 seconds in. Okay, so we'll start here.
There were changes made with substitution effects. For example, in the mid 90s, most of the changes here were made through the mid 90s. Alan Greenspan would argue, for example, if you have steak and the steak gets too expensive, people are going to buy more chicken. So you really should shift the weighting from steak to chicken in the index. And while that might make some sense from measuring certain economic elements, it does not measure anything accurately from the standpoint of what used to be the cost of living. The CPI, before they started changing it, effectively was the measure of maintaining a constant standard of living. And if you have to shift from steak to chicken, that's not maintaining a constant standard of living. but by shifting the weights, you could reduce the overall CPI. The effect here over.
All right. So there he just explained why the current numbers are so low. Okay? Because he said before the 90s, or they changed a lot of it in the 90s, but basically CPI was based on your constant standard of living, right? So if you're eating steak, then if the steak prices go up 15-20%, which I've heard that's what happened in the States, and the prices of food definitely went up in Korea as well, that means that inflation went up, right? Obviously, because CPI should measure your constant standard of living, right? How much did the prices for the goods and services that you were using before inflation, how much did those goods and services went up? Well, the current CPI measurement is, instead of measuring based on your constant standard of living, is, well, instead of buying steak, now you're buying chicken. And we all know chicken costs less than steak, beef. So that lowers, obviously that's going to lower the CPI, your consumer price index. Because even if chicken prices went up, it didn't, the price, the value of it is not as much as steak. So that's how they're rigging the numbers. That's how they're making the numbers look like it's lower than what it really is. So all those who actually go to a grocery store and you're buying, or you want to buy the same things you were buying before we had all these inflation hikes, you know that the stuff that you buy on a daily basis or weekly basis, they went up. It went up. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some things about inflation that I think is fair. For example, if you look at technology, we are able to use up more minutes, or unlimited minutes, unlimited data on our phones based on our phone plan. Our phones that we buy, which is once a year or once every 2 years, you have more features. It holds more data. The camera's better. The technology's better, but yet you're paying around the same price or a little bit more. But in comparison to the level of technology and what you're paying for, there's deflation, right? So if it used to cost you, $20, an additional $20, $25 a month to get unlimited data on your phone, but now it just costs you 15 or 20 bucks, whatever. It went down $5 or $7, $8 to get unlimited data. That's deflation, and that should be added into the CPI, which would decrease inflation. But you're talking about, with technology, with phones or TVs, home appliances, we only buy these things once every 2-3 years, or twice a year or something. And sure, yeah, phone prices in terms of service might have went down, depending on what service provider you use. That part is true. But let's look at the physical consumption. Let's look at food prices. Let's look at gas, physical stuff, cars, used cars, right? Outside of high-based technology like smartphones, computers, laptops, well, those things did go up. And if you were to use it, the true CPI based on, having a consistent standard of living that you were living in before, obviously it is high. It is, I would say, 13.5% inflation. Okay? I would say that's true. Now, let me speed this up to about 19 minutes. Okay. This is unemployment. Okay, this is unemployment.
These are three separate measures of employment. The bottom line, that's the headline unemployment rate. And the way that's defined is that to be counted as
Well, that's what the
unemployed.
government uses, right? Just to be clear, that's what the
Yes,
government shows.
That's the monthly number that comes out of the federal government.
Yeah.
And in order to be counted as unemployed, you have to be actively looking for a job.
Correct.
And that's their definition. The next line up is what they call U6. That's the broadest measure that they publish, and then they include in that discouraged workers. That's probably one of the biggest elements. But these are not people who are a discouraged worker. Someone who'd like to have a job, but he's not. He wants a job, but he's not actively working, so he doesn't get counted in the headline unemployment rate. This all changed. You go back in time. You see, I start my number 1994. That's when you had NAFTA. That's when they redefined the series. NAFTA was went into effect, and
Oh, come on. This is nutty. Hold on.
좋은 재료에서.
at the time, the broadest measure in terms of the discouraged worker didn't have a time limit. In the current numbers, if you're a discouraged worker, you want a job, but you can't find a job. There are no jobs available. That's the way they express it. Prior to the redefinition, as long as that was the circumstance, you were counted as a discouraged worker. It could be discouraged for 4 years. It didn't make any difference. It just counted you as a discouraged worker. After the redefinition, if you were discouraged for more than a year, they no longer counted you as being discouraged. So that what you see there is the difference between my number and the middle line, which is it's the official broadest measure of the government unemployment rate as it stands now, as defined since 1994. The difference between that line and my line is a continued buildup of long-term discouraged work. These are people who would like to work, they just can't find a job, and they've been discouraged for more than a year. It's not limited to being discouraged for a year. So that's the difference.
Okay.
So my measures along there.
So let's look at what he just said about unemployment. And there's something else about unemployment that I think is also a scam. All right. I mean, it's just ridiculous how they're measuring this stuff. Well, first, shadow stats, there's a Wikipedia for it. All right. So here, I'll read it. Is a website that analyzes and offers alternative to government economic statistics for the United States. Shadow States primarily focuses on inflation, but also keeps track of money supply, unemployment, and GDP by utilizing methodologies abandoned by previous administrations. Remember, this is how they used to do it, but they changed it from the Clinton era. Okay. So, in fact, it might have been changed after Clinton era. It says from the Clinton era to the Great Depression. So, I guess they changed it during the Clinton era. And the site is authorized by consulting economist Walter J. Williams, who you just saw on KOK News, which I highly recommend. KOK News, I watch them all the time. Awesome, they're excellent. Who holds a BA in economics and an MBA from Dartmouth College. Okay. And this is the thing. When you see this, here, okay, there. When you see that chart, I want you to understand how BS this chart is, okay? When you look at the red line, which is the bull crap that they're showing now, imagine this. Let's say you lost your job and you're looking for a job. However, within the past, there's a set time limit. Maybe it was like a month, 3 months, or 6 months. You did one part-time job where you just mowed somebody. Let's say you just mowed somebody's lawn and you got paid, whatever, 30, 40, 50 bucks to mow their lawn. And you just did that one time for that whatever period of time, whether it's 1 month or 3 months. You are actually part of the employment group. You're on the red line. But that was just a one-time gig. You see what I'm saying? And you're in the red line. I mean, that's just nonsense. You know, you want a full-time job and not a part-time job. Well, you know what? Okay, you're a part-time job, part-timer. You're on the red line. But also, once again, you heard what he said. If you're a discouraged worker, you want a job, you can't find a job, and it's been over a year, well, you're in that blue line. And don't get me wrong, I understand that you do have situations like moms where they're stuck at home having to watch their kids because of COVID-19, the lockdowns, and so the moms can't go out and get a job. Or maybe it's a dad that's staying home watching the kids, whatever the case is. And so you might have numbers like that. But the reality is some of the people who are counted in the red line should not be counted there. Okay? Because, you know, if you're looking for a job and you just did a gig within that time period, rather it's a month or two, 3, I don't know, what I can't remember anymore, that doesn't mean you were employed. Like, you shouldn't be that in the red line. And so they rig however much they can to make the numbers look good in their favor, right? You know, if you're not working, let's say you're not working, you just don't want to work, you don't want a job. Well, and you're unemployed, even though you're able-bodied, you're not going to be counted as unemployed because you're not looking for a job. Okay? And that's just something I want to show you guys, because right now all that stuff really does matter. Okay? And I'm gonna show you why it matters. Well, I wasn't gonna show it, but I guess I should show it in this video. Look at the U.S. trade deficit. Look at the U.S. trade deficit. It's at an all-time freaking high, right? It's over $75 billion. That means America's buying more stuff from around the world than is actually shipping out, or buying more products and services from around the world than the actual products and services that they're, providing to other countries around the world. Okay, $75.75 billion in the month of July. That's not good. I mean, that's terrible. Okay, and so, you know, the U.S. economy isn't looking good. It's not looking good. I'm just being straight up, being honest. All right. Now, I live in South Korea. South Korea's economy looks better because our exports have been an all-time historical high in July. Okay, that's just, I'm keeping it real. However, because of the lockdowns, a lot of small businesses are getting crushed. But that's a whole nother story. Now, so I showed you the inflation, right? I explained to you how inflation should really be. Not by, oh, I decided to go from steak to chicken. But if you were to live your consistent life of, I was eating steak before the pandemic, I'm going to continue to eat steak now, and steak went up over 15%, right? So the 1980s line, it's about 13.5%. What am I doing to hedge against that type of inflation? Now, South Korea, I live in South Korea currently, and we're at an all-time high in inflation as well. Yeah, we're at an all-time high in inflation as well. And what I'm doing to hedge against inflation is right here. I'm using KOK Play mining to hedge against inflation. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm doing. All right. And so, well, why? Because, as you can see, I put over $1,500 in to mine. That's going to give me 5%. And then I have my line, my network, which I'm going to get 3%. And I'm a 1-star, so I'm going to get 1% of that. Right? So let's look at my wallet. Right now, let's say I'm gonna round out the numbers. If it's 1.2764, I'm gonna just say 1.28. Okay, so let's go to my calculator. 1.28. plus my level profit 0.003. Okay. Well, because it's 003, I should go to 1.276. 1.276. Then 0.003. Then 0.9. Well, that 8 is behind the 2, so I'll round it out. 0.913. 0.913. Okay. 13. So if I add that up, it's 2.19, right? I'll get rid of the 2. Times that by 2, because about $2 for one KOK coin, right? Now, let's say on a daily, I get about $4.38, right? That's what I get from mining, including my line, my level up, and what I invested, right? What I put in. And let's say there's 30 days in a month. It is about $131.40. So I'm going to divide that. By what I put in. 1,031. 1,500. I'm sorry, 1,531. 0.7. We'll say 0.7. Okay, and times 100. And basically, that 8, I'll round it out to here. I get about 8 roughly, basically pretty close to 8.58%. Okay, 8.58% on what I put in on mining, right? That's a pretty good inflation hedge. And, that's not bad. And remember, it was about $131. So let's look at 131. Times that by 12. 1,572. Right? $1,572. Look at that. I'll get whatever I put in, I'm going to get that whole thing back in a year with that type of inflation. Or not inflation, but what I get back on my returns. And I'm going to throw all that back into the cumulative because you get double. You're capped at double, right? If I put $10,000, I'm capped at $20,000 until I put in more money to mine. And so to me, that is an incredible inflation hedge. Because not only do I get, think about this, 8.58%, but I have an opportunity to mine more to even get more back. You see what I'm saying? So I can actually get more than the 8.58% when the inflation right here is crazy inflation, right? Even with the inflation that they're using now, which is a scam form of, measuring the CPI compared to the 1980s method of measuring CPI, Consumer Price Index. You know what? Yeah. This is an incredible way to hedge against inflation, no matter what country you're in. Okay? No matter what country you're in. So it says a lot. It says a lot about this, what they're doing on the KOK Play platform, and that's why you have premium brand companies like Burberry, okay, Intel, all right, LG, Gillette. There's Burberry again. Okay, think about it. Why would these companies be paying money? BMW, why would they pay money to KOK Play, the platform, to advertise to the people who are mining in, who are buying products, digital contents, and physical goods? Why? Because they know what an extremely good mining program that they have based on how legit the platform is. Okay, they know how legit this platform is. These companies aren't stupid. They don't just invest anywhere. They know what they're doing, right? And they know because of the legitimacy of the company. Okay, the digital contents, the shopping mall, everything. They see that you have an exchange here, okay, which I'm going to get into later on another video, how important this exchange is, especially for the metaverse in the future, is extremely important. And, you know, you have the mining system, right? And it's on some of the top exchanges in the world. And that's why I use KOK Play to hedge against inflation and, you know, what seems like what's going to happen in the future, which doesn't look good. But KOK Play looks excellent to prepare for what doesn't look good in the future. So that's all that is. Now, if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe, hit the like, all of that, okay? And now I might be using this on my second channel because my first channel I got a strike by YouTube because, you know, they are like a wannabe communist system where they don't let you voice your opinion, right? It's kind of disgusting how authoritarian some of these big tech companies are starting to become. But that's a whole nother story. Now, also, you know, I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm telling you what I'm doing and the reasons why I'm doing it. And I explained the reasons, right? So now here, if you want, go to Play Store, type in KOK space PLAY, download KOK Play, and you're going to need a recommendation code. Use my recommendation code, QAABIRWL, QAABIRWL. Join the KOK Play family. Okay, join the KOK Play family. All right, everyone, stay blessed, God bless, and KOK on.